What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I trimmed this perfect looking, beautiful beef brisket. Coming up. When it comes to trimming a brisket, there are many different styles, tips, and tricks out there, but really what we're trying to do is eliminate the unnecessary fat, meat that's gonna burn up, give this thing a nice shape, and really just maximize the amount of sliceable brisket we're gonna get after this thing is cooked. Because this raw meat is a lot more valuable to me than burnt meat after it's been cooked. So, that being said, let's trim this thing up. So the first thing I always tell people when I'm teaching them how to trim a brisket is to open the package along this big piece of fat on the meat side of the brisket. That way, you're not scoring into any meat and making any unnecessary gashes. Speaking of unnecessary gashes, sometimes they come that way, but there's not really much you can do about that. But the reason I say it's okay to slice into this is because that's the first piece we're gonna remove. So, to do that, it's really quite simple. Sometimes you can get your hands right in there and just kind of grab it. There's a natural separation, and you can really get a good headway just by pulling on it. It's already starting to lift up, but then you can get the tip of your knife and just follow the seam. A lot of people will just shave this down or leave it in there altogether, and I think that's a mistake because oftentimes I'll see a nice slice of fatty brisket that'll have a big chunk of fat right at the very end of it that didn't render out, and I don't think that's a very good look. So I like to get it all the way out. Like I said, there's a natural seam in there, and that's looking pretty good to me. And this is all 100% fat. Better off putting it in burger grind. While I'm on the back side here, this is when I'll often come and smooth everything out. Because this is where it's gonna be laying on the smoker, so I wanna make sure it's laying flat. This is also a good time to tackle any silver skin that may be on your brisket. Looking real nice. Fat is removed. You can see this beautiful marbling right there. We're gonna get some really good burn ends out of that. All the silver skin is removed for the most part. Real nice, clean looking, flat laying brisket. I'll also take this opportunity to start rounding off some of this fat on this side. Not a big slice, I don't want to take any meat off, but any fat that's overhanging. And also any of these edges where it was cut from the steer, they can tend to be a bit rough. So I'm gonna round those off because anything that's kind of feathery or dried out, we want to remove because it'll burn up on the pit and then you'll end up with some crunchy stuff on the ends. When you're slicing it with your bread knife, it'll catch one of the serrations and you'll end up tearing your meat. Trying to shape it up. You can see there's a bunch of fat right here. Might as well get that while we're on this side. This knife I'm using is a Victorinox red boning knife. You know me, I like my red knives. This thing does meat very well. They cost about 17 bucks or so. I'll have a link in the description if you guys want to pick one up for yourself. But this side, the meat side, the back side, the underside is all about just kind of cleaning it up, making sure everything looks nice. Rounding off any sharp corners, making it nice and aerodynamic. All right, now one of the most important cuts in the whole brisket trim is probably the most overlooked, which would be this piece right here. Right where the fatty muscle meets the lean muscle, there's a big glob of fat that kind of cascades downward. And every single day I see a picture of brisket that's a beautiful center cut slice where it's about half lean and half fatty, that nice center cut brisket slice. But on the end, there's a big glob of unrendered fat, and that's because of this right here. It's very simple to take out. All you got to do is right where the meat hits the fat, right at the end here, you want to go straight down right until you hit about this, where you know the lean is, and then scoop it out. Big chunk of fat gets overlooked all the time, and that's kind of how I judge a brisket trim. If you know how to take that piece out, then you're good to go. And this is also a really nice line because we went straight down that once this is cooked, this will be a really good indicator of where to switch it from slicing this way to slicing this way. Now we're gonna focus on all of this top fat. On the end here, you can tell there's a nice 1/4 inch of fat right there, and then it comes up super high. So we're gonna just go to town on all of this stuff right here. I always like to be spreading it out to make sure it's sitting flat so it's not bunched up and the fat looks higher than it is. So starting on the back here, I like to cut down this way because it's really thick on the end, and this way I can kind of start light and then go heavy on this side. So here we can see the meat starting to poke through. That's a good indicator of how much fat is on here and where the meat lives. One thing I like to do just for aesthetic purposes is I call it the Chud scrape, where you just kind of run your knife along and get rid of all your knife marks. Does nothing for cooking, but it just looks nice. And I am saving all of these trimmings, all the meat and fat. I mean, you paid just as much for that as you did for this brisket, so you better be saving them. If you want to see me do a video on what to do with those, let me know in the comments below, and I'll get that out in a few weeks. All right, so now at this point, the backside is looking real nice and clean. Front side fat layer is really even all the way across. We've got this part scooped out, so now it's time to focus on the point and all of this fat right here. That's too much fat, so we're gonna have to scoop it out. I usually start right at this cut that I made earlier. I try to remove as little of this point meat as possible while still scooping out as much of this fat as possible. And then just go to town. You can see how it's just not very good looking meat. So we lost a little bit of meat, but we also took out a whole bunch of fat that's not going to render down too well. That being said, this piece is starting to poke up a little bit, so I'll probably flatten that out just so it doesn't burn up. And now we got a really nice, even, beautiful piece of brisket. So at this point, this brisket is looking real nice. It's got the perfect amount of fat on it. It's well shaped, nothing standing too tall. The only thing I'm looking at now is shaping this brisket, because on this side, we've got a whole bunch of lean meat with not much fat on top of it. And that would be great for cooking up, but it wouldn't be a really good slice. So basically, I'm gonna take out all of this super lean meat, and then I'm gonna curve it around to give this brisket a really nice shape so this little thin corner doesn't burn up either. So this is starting to look real good. Just make sure everything's nice and rounded off, because anything that's poking or sticking out is gonna get a little too crispy for our likings. And then from here on out, it's all about just kind of going around, shaping everything up, making sure everything looks nice, finding any rough spots that you may have missed. Oftentimes on the back here, if there's a really sharp edge where you made a direct cut, I'll kind of go around and feather off any edges or round everything off, make sure everything's nice and clean. And that to me is a good looking brisket. All right, and that is my basic trim style when it comes to brisket. It seems pretty aggressive because, like I said, all this fat and meat that I took off is a lot more valuable to me in grind or sausage rather than burnt brisket or something that dries out on the pit. And really what I'm trying to go for here is as much sliceable, edible, beautiful brisket as possible. I know I didn't get too much into the anatomy of the brisket, point versus flat versus deco versus all that stuff, because I feel like it's been covered enough. But if you want to hear me get into that, let me know in the comments below, and I will gladly make a video about that. So if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for future videos where I'll cook this and deal with all the scraps and trimmings and all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments below what you want to see me cook next. Follow me on Instagram at ChudsBBQ. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside.